This is Legacy Battle. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on whatever you're listening on. I'm Michael Adams, creator of Legacy Battle. My panelists tonight from the Gridiron Battle Zone, Brian King, Ball State athlete Paul Habicott, and we have a special guest panelist tonight. We want to welcome back to the show Jockey Del Cordova. He's got over 13,000 career starts. You can check his episode out in the archives. Tonight he's joined as a panelist. Dale, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. I'm glad you invited me.
Yeah, we're happy to have you back, and of course we have our special guest tonight. We're just joined tonight by a true pioneer, legend. There's so many words I could use. She is the first woman jockey ever to be basically in paid betting races. The first woman to race in the Kentucky Derby. Tonight's Q&A with her, you don't want to miss this because we're going to get into some of the things that she went through, let's just say, trying to even get on the racetrack, being a woman in her time period. So don't miss the Q&A after our debate tonight. She's got career wins, 235. Don't believe what Google says. Google says 228. It's 235. Trust me on that. And then she's got almost 400 second and third place finishes as well. So just a fantastic career. She's got a book out. We're going to talk about that later as well. So we got legend jockey Diane Crump here. Diane, thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's good to be here.
Awesome. So tonight's debate is going to be the greatest jockey of all time. We've done the greatest racehorse of all time already. Check it out in the archives. That one was with Dale over there. And we're going to have our Q&A after, but we're going to start out tonight with Brian. Go ahead.
All right, Lester Piggott. Come out of Berkshire, England. He was 5'8", 117 pounds, which is big for a horse jockey, and that earned him the name Longfellow. Both Lester's grandfather and father were decorated jockeys and stable owners, so he came from a strong legacy of horse racing. But he also faced some everyday challenges with his hearing deficiency and his speech impediment. So Lester got a very early start into competitive horse racing at the age of 10. And after some immediate success, he got a new nickname, Boy Wonder. So he won the Derby at just the age of 18. Lester developed a unique style of riding. He would put his backside real high in the air and his stirrups cranked up close to the saddle. And this helped enable him to read the races like no one ever really had before him. And it has been imitated countless times by other jockeys. Throughout his career, he won the Derby a record 9 times. The 2,000 guineas 5 times, the 1,000 guineas 2 times, Epsom Oaks 6 times, and the St. Leger Stakes 8 times. He won the British Flat Racing Championship 11 times. In 1970, he rode the horse Nijinsky to a Triple Crown, and it was the first Triple Crown winner in England in 35 years. He also won in other countries. He had 1 in Canada, 46 in France, 5 in Germany, 32 in Ireland, 11 in Italy, 3 in Singapore, 1 in Slovakia, and 3 in the U.S. And one of his U.S. wins may be his most impressive of all. After serving a year in jail for tax evasion, he spent, or most felt like Lester's career was over at this point in time. So at the age of 54, he entered the Breeders' Cup Mile at the age of 54, 1990. Despite being an underdog, he was able to push his horse Royal Academy across the finish line, just a nose ahead of the second place horse to complete the storybook ending. He would go on to win a few more races until 1995 when an injury forced him to retire at the age of 59. But when the dust finally settled on his career, he had won an astounding 5,300 races worldwide and had earned over $8 million overall. So he was the British champion 11 times, a style-setting jockey. He had a great comeback, and he won the Derby more than anyone else has. So that's Lester Piggott.
So a flat racing specialist, I believe that's usually a max of 2 miles. Diane, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Usually it's shorter than that, but of course in Europe they do run longer than they do here.
Right.
But that would probably be accurate.
Okay. And then My first question with you with Lester is the fact that he definitely raced on grass more than anybody we're talking about tonight. So what is the difference between the grass or the clay that we see a lot here in the United States?
I mean, it's a different, you ride it a little differently. The style is a little different, but you have to also go by the conditions. You know, whether it's a really fast turf course or whether it's really, really slow and yielding. So, I mean, there's a bit of difference, but on the other hand, it's still racing. You know what I mean? Yes, you just ride the grass a little differently. I mean, like some horses just love it. And so their speed will hold up. And the yielding track, the horses that like to come from behind, it works perfect for them. So, I mean,
Right.
so I don't know if it's the riding so much, but the horses, if they like the grass, they're a completely different animal. And if they don't like it, they're in trouble. So I guess they're in trouble in Europe if they don't like it.
Yeah.
But here we have both, so we're good.
So let's go to that then. Most of his races are in Europe. In your opinion, how do you think he would have fared if he was full-time over here in the United States? Is the competition level that different?
I don't think the competition level is different. I think the one thing is the style here is different. So I'm not sure if he would have been as popular here as he would have been there. That'd just be my opinion. Just because of his style, it was perfect for the European racing, obviously, to see what he's done. So I think the difference, for one thing, we have a lot more riders here, because we have a lot more racetracks. And then I think with our style, which is way more speed and shorter distances, I don't think he would have fared quite as well. That's just my opinion, but that would be my guess.
He was so famous in the United Kingdom. I had watched a whole thing on YouTube that when he passed away, like it was like when a king or queen passed away, there was just documentaries and TV shows, and it was on TV forever. Like he was huge there. So definitely
He was in
the
the right
European
place,
champion.
wasn't he?
Exactly. All right. Well, let's move on to our next horse, and that's going to be done by, or not horse, jockey. That's going to be done by Dale. Go ahead, Dale.
Okay, I've got Michael Earl Smith, better known as Big Money Mike, and there's a big reason for that. He's any big race, he's going to be in the money. It don't matter how far or anything. He's just the best. He was born in Dexter, New Mexico, which is about 10 miles from Roswell, which you can see that why he, as a jockey, he's just out of this world, being in Roswell. He began at small racetracks at age 11, at unrecognized racetracks. He was riding at age 11. And at 16 is when he took his professional license out, apprentice, at Santa Fe, New Mexico, where he won his first race. He worked his way up to the bigger tracks eventually. He rode his first Kentucky Derby at 19, which is probably the second youngest ever. And about 89, he moved to New York, where he became leading rider and legendary rider, where he set the North American record for 62 stakes victories in 1 year. It's amazing. And then 2 years later, he broke that record with 68. It still stands, which 12 of those that year or not 12, 20 was grade 1. He won 7 American Classic races, which are the jewels for the Triple Crown. He won 2 Kentucky Derbies, 2 Preaknesses, 3 Belmonts, and then he went on. He won 27 Breeders' Cup races, which he still holds the record for that. And 4 of them was a Breeders' Cup Classic. Of course, he did win the Triple Crown in 2018, the biggest honor ever. There's only been, in 148 years, only been 13 horses and riders to ever win that, which is a big deal. And his awards, he was inducted into the National Museum of Hall of Fame in 2003. 2 times Eclipse Award winner for Outstanding Jockey, the George Wolfe Award. He won the Bill Shoemaker Award 3 times. He won the Lafitte Pincay Award, which Lafitte awarded it to him. He's won so many awards, I can't even put them all in here. If it was a Mike Smith Award, he'd have won that.
And he's
Which
still
there
going,
will
right?
be. Yeah, he's still active. He's still in all the big races. He is in his career. He's rode over 34,000 races. He's won close to 6,000 races, close to 5,000 seconds, and over 4,000 thirds. His horses have earned over $345 million. And that's a lot of money. He gets a percentage of that. I think Mike Smith, if you took like Bill Shoemaker's finesse, Lafitte's strength, and Russell's endurance, and Lester's strategies and style, if you put them all together, you'd come up with Mike Smith, because he's studied racing his whole life, and he knows what it takes to be the best. And so that's why I think he is.
So Diane, he's our only active racer tonight. Let me ask you about this, because I did a little research on all these. I always do that. But so Mike is kind of known for waiting to use his whip till towards the very end of the race. That's unusual from what I've read about. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, it's the best. It's the most effective. I mean, I think that's pretty. I think that's a good plan. Obviously, it's worked really well for him. But I mean, I think that's pretty a commonplace that you would use it right at the end. I mean, when you're trying to get the very most out of him, right at coming to the wire, that's where it's the most important. But no, obviously, there's nothing you can say. He's amazing.
And I
he's
know
amazing to keep going. And it is hard. It's wear and tear. And to keep going, it shows you've got a heck of a lot of strength and perseverance. That's for sure. And you've learned a lot riding that many good horses. Good horses teach you. Because then you can use strategy. Then you can really evaluate things. When you ride a bunch of them that aren't that talented, it's tough. You're trying to eke out every last basically penny that you can. But in his case, when you ride so many great horses, you become a better rider and you learn more.
I'm sure you're familiar with Zenyatta. That was probably his best horse, I would think. I mean,
well, what about Justified?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Justified. You're right. Yeah, he's up there too. I mean, the man has been blessed. So
He's been blessed. Yes. I'm sure he
is,
deserves it, but he's still been blessed.
That's what I was going to say. Do you think it's more him, or is he getting placed with the right horses, or a little of both?
It's both for sure. But I mean, obviously you have to have the talent. But to have talent, if you ride bad horses, nobody ever knows. Because look at the odd jockeys that once in a while have cropped up and won the Derby, right? That nobody ever heard of because they were on some small track, riding, with like the Smarty Jones and the Rich Strike. They were at small tracks. But see, when they had a horse, they could win at the big time. So part of it does go with you get the right horses. And, they make you ride better. That's just a fact of life. They make you ride better. And you can darn sure learn more when you're on a horse that's got ability. It's just like, I think, like a race car driver. If you have a good car, a good horse, you can get more out of them. And the more you get out of them, the more you can figure out how to do it. So I think it works both ways. So he's a good rider, but good horses have helped him along the way. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you get that horse that comes out of nowhere, like Mind That Bird. Where did that come from,
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yep.
Well, let's move on to Paul. Go ahead.
Okay, I took Bill Shoemaker. So even though the crown itself eluded him, Shoemaker won 11 Triple Crown races during his career, spanning over like 4 different decades. He was inducted to the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame in 1958, and he was immortalized as part of a series of portraits by Andy Warhol, of all things. So you can kind of see one of them there behind me in the background. I think that's kind of odd. I don't know what that would be comparable to today, but as Dale was talking in his Mike Smith segment, Bill's got an award named after him too. So he's got a ton of victories and races. I'm going to try and name some of the key ones. He won the Kentucky Derby 4 times, Preakness Stakes 2 times, Belmont Stakes 5 times, Breeders' Cup Classic once in 87, Fairgrounds Racing Hall of Fame 1971, Shoemaker Mile Stakes at Hollywood Park. He's got a life-size bust of him in Santa Anita Park. And some of the things he's known for, before I get into a couple races that kind of formed him and his legend, United States champion jockey by earnings for 10 years, United States champion jockey by wins in 50, 53, 54, 58, and 59, George Wolfe Memorial Jockey Award, Big Sportive Turfdom Award, Eclipse Award for Outstanding Jockey, Eclipse Award of Merit. So I guess when I was researching Bill, a couple races that people voted to be some of his best, the Marlboro Cup in 1976 at Belmont Park, maybe his greatest racing achievement, riding a horse named Forgo. And Forgo's drive started from the 8th position out of 11. And on the backstretch, it's sort of a late charge, ended in a very muddy that day, very nasty track. And he ends up going to victory by a nose over Honest Pleasure. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Honest Pleasure might have been one of the favorites. But Shoemaker was later quoted saying that was the best horse he'd ever ridden. And then he's got another one here, which is kind of funny. He's got 79 to 80, has a good stretch. He was riding Spectacular Bid in the horse's final 13 races and only lost once during that stretch. And this included Spectacular Bid's perfect 9 for 9 1980 season, culminating a walkover in the Woodward Stakes. So in his autobiography, Shoemaker, in 1988, he calls Spectacular Bid the greatest horse he rode in his storied career. So maybe a little bit of like, what have you done for me lately? Kind of a tragic end for Bill. He did become a writer later on in his life. 94, 95, 96, he wrote some mystery books, which ironically featured a jockey turned sleuth, Coley Killebrew, using his racetrack experience in and about his restaurant in the horse world. So you might have become a writer because in 91, he wrecked his 91 Ford Bronco too, if you remember what those looked like. And it had a lot of elements of controversy surrounding it. Number one being alcohol. Number two being some lawsuits that were filed against Ford Motor Company and the California Department of Transportation. I think he was arguing that there should have been guardrails on that road. But Bill lived. That's my opinion of him. He was a great racer. He's definitely was into pop culture, but Bill was a guy that lived and rode horses really well. That's Bill Shoemaker.
So Diane, let's start with size. Bill is considered undersized as a jockey, which that's saying a lot because, you know, jockeys are smaller in stature to begin with. He was under 5 foot tall. I think I had him at 4'11" or 4'10". How does that affect him riding a horse? Is he?
Well, it helps for one thing. It helps weight, because look at poor Pinkay. He was starved all the time. I mean, his diet was, I don't know, the willpower that man had to keep his weight down was absolutely amazing. So it really helps when you're small and light. Julie Crump was small like that, and it helped. It does. It's not a detriment in this sport for sure. I mean, to be small, you're still strong when you're doing that kind of work. So I mean, I'd say you're strong because you don't have to diet. You're already small and light, and I think you can stay really fit. And of course, he was, he had a great, I guess, strategy. I mean, he could figure it out. He knew, he knew where he was. He knew his horses, and he knew exactly how they wanted to run. But I think being small is not a bad thing in this game, for sure. So, I mean, having no trouble with weight is huge, because that is a problem for a lot of the riders. I don't know about all of them, but a lot of them certainly have that problem. So I think with that, you're going to stay stronger. So I think you're small, it's easy to keep your weight and fitness. And so it makes it a little easier, I think.
So he, as Paul said, he didn't win the Triple Crown, but he does have tonight the most Triple Crown races victories out of everyone that we're talking about.
Right.
When we add them all together. So just in your opinion, does that mean more than, say, my guy who we're going to talk about next that has like the most wins overall?
No, because it's the horse. It's riding the right horse and being able to pick the right one, that's going to be another Justify, which hasn't happened that often. But at any rate, I think that has a lot to do with it, because when you think of the amount of horses that are running in the year to the amount that you can ride, I think it makes it kind of tough to be able to have that. I don't think it says anything about his ability. It was just the stroke of luck, or not luck, whatever you want to call it. But I think that's basically what it is. It's numbers. It's a numbers game, I hate to say. And so, he's riding so many nice horses. It just wasn't exactly the right one to be able to, to win the Triple Crown. So I would say it was just luck.
Well, let's move on to our final jockey tonight, and that's going to be Russell Baze, 42-year career. So if we're talking longevity, that is definitely up there. He's the only jockey to ride over 50,000 races. I have him clocked in at over 53,000 if we're getting technical. He's won more North American races than anyone and has amassed over, well, last I checked, 199 million in winnings. So that's pretty fantastic. I'm definitely in the wrong business, that's for sure. U.S. Wrestling Hall of Fame, 1999. He's got almost 13,000 wins. He is the model of consistency. You never really saw him finishing like in the lower card. It's just fantastic jockey. He's got awards too. He's got the George Wolf Jockey Award winner, the Clip Special, Isaac Murphy Awards, several of those. So this is just a really interesting stat that I found, that he averaged 3.5 races a day in his career. That's a lot of races in a day. So that's just crazy to me. I mean, think about that, 3.5 races a day. And then he won 400 or more races a year, an incredible 11 times. No other jockey's done that even more than 3 times. So that's just crazy. Now, I just mentioned before about the Triple Crown. He is our guy tonight that he doesn't have the Triple Crown. He's never won the Derby, the Preakness. I didn't see that he won the Belmont either. So he didn't win any of the 3 big races, but he has won the most races overall. And I think, to me, that means something. I don't know if it will in our vote. We'll see when we get to that. But he was a fantastic racer, and I think to do it as long as he did shows his love for the sport. I remember our prior show with Dale, he talked about like it's like a drug, and it definitely was that for Russell. So I love him, great racer. Diane, let me come to you. What are your thoughts on why he couldn't win a Triple Crown race? Let's start with that. Is it again come down to the horse?
It does, but so where he rode, wasn't Aqueduct, Belmont, wasn't the New York circuit. It wasn't the California circuit. It was Northern California. But where he rode, and he had such a passion to be able to continue that with such, fervor. That when you want to ride that much, that's the way I always was. But that you wanted to ride, and it didn't matter what. That was your life. You were driven. It was a passion. So I see that. And I think, I don't know, but I would think that he loved the people and the area where he rode. And so those people aren't going to probably be the Bob Bafferts, the Wayne Lucases, the Bill Motts. You know, they're not of that, I don't know what the word is, but they're not of that status, I guess, because of where they were. But they love that area. That's where they're from. That's what they liked. And that's where they raced. And so I'm sure he got ingrained in that. He loved it. He loved the people that he rode for. And so he stayed there because that's what he loved. He didn't want to change that. And so those trainers in that area are not as likely to have the people that can go to Keeneland and buy 10 or $15 million yearlings. You know what I mean? They're going to buy the more medium priced horses. And so I'm sure that's the key. And so for him, he was happy to be doing what he was doing, to be riding at his level, his consistency, the passion, the drive. And so it was okay for him that he didn't try to, you know, go somewhere else and make it so that he could, you know, maybe get that kind of mount. And so, I mean, I give him credit for that he found what he loved, where he found his niche. He was making the people in his area, which weren't, you know, the high and mighty famous ones, but he was making them a good living because he tried so hard and that he gave them everything he had, that I think that gives him a huge, big credit in my book.
Well, here's a couple honorable mentions: Gary Stevens, Eddie Arcaro, John Velasquez, and Leffit Pincay. So guys who just missed our list tonight. Let's move into our vote. Cannot vote for your own. Brian, start us out.
Well, you know, I was on the fence with this going in, but I really like what Dale said about Money Mike there. I mean, being a combination of each one of the jockeys, sort of taking their best attributes and putting it all together and being a student of the sport. I'm really impressed with that. So I'm going to go with him.
Okay. I'll go next. I'm going to say this. If we did this 10 years from now, I'd probably be taking Mike Smith as well. But we're not doing it 10 years from now. We're doing it right now. So I'm going with Shoemaker. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I was on the fence too. I mean, this is tough. I think what I'll do to make it difficult is I'll go with Lester.
All right. Dale?
Well, of course, since I can't pick my own Mike Smith, I'm going to have to go with Russell. Russell has the ability to ride any race with anybody at any track. He has the ability. He's proved that over and over. Give him the horses that the top riders are riding, he's going to get them there. And the amount of work and persistence that he's done, amazing.
So not often that we get one vote apiece, which puts all the pressure on
That's
Diane.
the way it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. You're used to pressure. So who are you taking?
I'm taking Mike.
Okay.
I am Money Mike.
All right. So a win for Mike Smith.
He just keeps winning and giving it everything. It's close in my big book between he and Russell, but I'm going to go with Mike.
Dale, you need to never come on again because you now have a win percentage of perfect. Just keep that and retire.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move into our Q&A. And Dale, you got the win, so you can ask first question. Go for it.
Well, first off, Diane, much respect, very much respect. As a woman in the late 60s, I can't even imagine how hard it was to break in. It's hard enough just for a guy to break in, and let alone the barriers that you did. So much respect. And for women riders, Mike Smith and I, we started the same day, the same track. And some of the women riders that were there riding, like Tommy Swan, Vicky Smallwood, Harla Webb, Jody Parker, Nancy Summers, Monica Stanley. I could go on. Those were just riders that we were riding with on a daily basis. A lot of respect for them. They are hard workers. They're tough. They're relentless. So I think they all have owed that to you. I guess the one question I probably want to ask you is, because in horse racing, you got to worry about the injuries and the hours of work and everything. But on a jockey's mind that weighs on your mind all day, every day, did you have a weight problem as a jockey? Because we all did.
Not in the early years, but as I got older, I had to work harder to keep it down. So I guess, yes, I had a weight problem. I mean, I wasn't like Bill Shoemaker or Julie Crone. I mean, I had to work, I did have to work harder, but in the first years, no, I stayed that light. But as I did get older, I had and plus because my life was a little different than most people because I had to work as a regular job. I had to have ride, gallop horses. I had to work a job as an exercise rider. I was a stable foreman. I mean, I did everything. And in the winter, I went home and broke yearlings. So because I couldn't get the mounts to support more than that. And I loved it with the greatest passion of any of those. I mean, I would have ridden every race every day. I was so driven. And I guess the hardest thing for me was the frustration of, I worked a regular job, galloping horses, ran their shed row. And yet at 4 a.m., I'd be galloping outside horses when, we'd start at 5:30. When we get through, I'd get on extra horses. I'd go to farms in the afternoon, horses that people didn't want to ride. So, I mean, that was the frustration of the mounts. So for me, no, I worked hard enough in the early years to not have to worry about weight at all. But later, as I got a little older, it did change, but I still was okay. I mean, a lot easier for me than a lot of riders.
Yeah, and also back in them days, they didn't have any women's quarters where you could spend time by yourself. And they have saunas now in women's quarters and everything, which you didn't have any of that. So I like I said, it's always weighing on a jockey's mind, and I just didn't know if you had that problem.
Later on, but early on, no. I just worked harder.
Yeah.
That kept it down.
We'll go Paul, Brian, me.
Sure. Diane, obviously, huge inspiration. We're going to hear about it more in some of your questions that you answer and talking about your life. So I guess I was curious, who was your inspiration? I was going to hazard a guess and say perhaps Catherine Kuzner, but maybe you could elaborate on who inspired you.
Well, I can say she was part of it. I mean, for me, as far as just wanting to ride, I didn't have anybody inspiration except for that was just my desire. But for an inspiration, for guts and for getting in there and making it work, it was Kathy. Absolutely. For the toughness that she persevered to get a license and to get the racing commission to say, okay. I mean, she was tough and she hung in there. And plus she was so smart. And a group of women lawyers that donated their services to help her go, take it to court and everything. So yes, she was awesome. And I mean, what a great rider as actually an equestrian, maybe not a race rider. And she knew it once she started that wasn't really her thing, but she was amazing riding jumpers and, doing other horse sports. And she rode fine, but it wasn't her thing in that respect. But her gameness and her guts to get out there and do what she did and fight it legally, I'm not sure if I would have had that. But for her to fight it legally, she was definitely an inspiration to me. Yes.
So Diane, when we look at your accomplishments today, it's everybody's very impressed with what you were able to to be like a pioneer in the sport for women. But obviously, in the beginning, there was a lot of pushback. So my question to you was, from getting from point A to point B, at what point do you feel like you were starting to feel some acceptance and the tide was starting to change and you were getting a lot more support for what you were doing from the male population of the jockeys and people in the horse racing industry in general?
Well, I will say it took several years before you even thought that people were starting to accept you. I mean, early on, of course, I rode for Don, who, we later got married, but his owners, Warner Jones that owned Hermitage Farm, and Mr. Brown, the man that owned the horse that I rode in the Derby, when they'd come out to watch their horses in the morning, they always thought, wow, look at, like I'd break a horse out of the gate and there'd be 7 or 8 horses in the morning. And I don't think I ever got beat in the morning, breaking horses out of the gate. I was always good on 2-year-olds, first time starters. And I mean, like teaching horses to break out of the gate, that was sort of my thing, I guess, because as a kid, I used to do match races down these back roads. I don't know, but I had a quick, that kind of thing was sort of ingrained in me. I just loved that. I had fast reflexes. I like to drive fast and ride fast. But anyway, I mean, it just took, other than those people that really liked me and, could see me in the morning, but for everybody else that, ran a bigger barn or whatever, some of the small people that, needed help in the morning, well, then they might give me a chance to ride their horse in the afternoon because I'd come get on it for free or whatever. But for the most part, I'm going to say it took 10 years to start feeling a big difference. The first several years, half the time I dressed in a ladies' restroom or the first aid room. I mean, it was just so, I don't know, everybody was still against it. And it was so hard. And the fans, other than Kentucky, they were the best fans in Kentucky toward me, even from the start. But everywhere else, it was hard. They'd follow you around, tell you to go back to the kitchen, go home and clean your house, and on and on and on. So after 5 years, it started toning down, but it took 10 to get more acceptance. And that's when, Julie Crone came along about 10 years after I started. So it was slow coming, unfortunately.
So let's elaborate just a little more on the end of that. Those first few races, I've read that you had to be police escorted out in to the tracks, things like that. So were you receiving like death threats? I mean, like how bad did it get?
No, it wasn't that. I mean, it was, the hardest thing is they just didn't know because everybody would crowd around you, so you could hardly move. But it wasn't death threats. I mean, maybe if it was in this era, it might be, but back then, no. It was mostly just they didn't want you to ride. They were like, oh, you're going to get people hurt. Look at all the riders that have gotten killed in the past. I'm like, well, what did I have to do with it, or any woman, because we couldn't ride? You know what I mean? I mean, some of the things that they said didn't make any sense. But I guess it's just so ingrained. What, 200 years of racing in America and no women. So I mean, yes, at the some of the smaller unrecognized places, in bush tracks, but in reality, there just wasn't. It was so male oriented that it just took a while for anybody to be able to accept it.
All right. Okay, one more each, guys. We'll go same order. Go ahead, Dale.
Oh, yeah, Diane. As far as for you to just ride the Kentucky Derby it's amazing, and the feeling just stepping on that track for that race and playing the song. Did you tear up a little bit?
Yes. Yes. That part is amazing. It's such a great feeling, isn't it? I mean, it just, in the paddock, everybody around you, and then there's no naysayers to that because everybody's so excited. I mean, let's face it, I don't care. It might not have the most money, but it's still the most famous race in the world, in my opinion. And just that feeling when you stepped out, when the groom handed the horse to the pony, when you get, when you start warming up and you hear My Old Kentucky Home, it gives you chill bumps just to think about it. And just the whole time warming up, it was amazing. So no, that feeling it's really, it's not even describable. Actually, it's amazing.
Yes, I even all jockeys the same thing. They step on that track for the Kentucky Derby. They hear that song. I don't care how big a man you are. You're gonna have some tears.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely. You're not breathing if you don't have that. If you don't feel that.
That's right.
Diane, you were from a young age, even though you weren't really around horses that much, it seemed from what I read, that this is what you wanted to do. You wanted to get into this. And so I guess since Oldsmar, Florida is really only about 20 minutes from where I live, I was looking at that part of your life. So I guess my question is two-part. Why horses at such a young age? And when you moved to Oldsmar from, I guess, Connecticut, is that when you kind of knew, is that the start of it, when you knew that this might turn into something?
Yes, because all I ever wanted to do was ride. And I didn't think beyond that about the racing. So as a kid, but when we moved to Oldsmar and had got my first riding horse, I was 12. And the craziest thing is I was riding down Racetrack Road, not really knowing what Racetrack Road meant. Didn't even know there was a racetrack till I was riding the riding horse that I had, just a little quarter horse, riding down there. When I saw that track, I don't know if people can actually believe that, but I swear there was something that hit me that was like nothing I had ever felt before. It's almost like, I don't know, I call it baptized by fire. It was like crazy. The way I felt when I saw that track, I was so drawn to it, I couldn't even believe it. And from then, I had to ride my horse. I had to figure out how to get in there. I had to figure out how to get around on the track. It wasn't long. I started a riding club, and one of the boys in the club was trimming horses, and he was like, "Hey, there's a farm that needs help," and it happened to be a thoroughbred farm. He didn't say that, and I didn't know it, but I got the job handling the weanlings. And that fall, they said, "Oh, our horses are coming in from the track, are coming in from Ohio to race here." And oh my God, when they came in, it was just like all of it. I was so drawn to it and fascinated by it that I knew that was it. That was my life right there. I just knew it from that moment on. I guess maybe I was 13 by the time, but I absolutely knew that's all I wanted. And so from there, I made myself learn how to ride. I mean, because I was self-taught, and I went from handling the weanlings to the next year. Luckily, it was so laid back in those days, and my parents didn't have a clue about anything, that they were like, "You think you could break the yearlings?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I didn't even know what that meant. So they got some guy that worked at the gate that would, throw me up on them, give me a leg, how you lay across them and you get on them in the stall. And little by little, step by step, I mean, he was a gate man. He was a big guy. So he helped handle them on the ground. And then he was like, "Okay, now, you teach them how to guide, and then you start jogging them in the shed." But the more I rode, the more I wanted to ride. And then when the races were in town, we weren't allowed into the track because I wasn't 16. And so I'd watch it, stand outside the gate and watch. It was just the fascination of it all, and the whole process of every last thing, the training, just watching them, just everything to do with it was a fascination. And for me, that was it. I knew that was my life right there. So I worked to that. From that moment on, I started working. Anybody that would let me get on a horse, I don't care if it's just a walking around the shed row. I learned to ride at the farm, and then they'd sneak me in, and I'd get on them, learn how to gallop little by little for whatever, get run off with, get bucked off, whatever. That was at the farm. But I learned by doing it. And when you've made a mistake, you figured out how not to do that. And so I just loved it. Nothing stopped me. It didn't matter what happened. I was so driven for it. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I just loved it.
Well, Diane, I understand that you now have a dog ministry that you're working on currently.
I do.
Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I guess I went from horses to the dogs. So when things changed, when I couldn't ride anymore, and I have my business that I sell horses, because the only thing I've ever done is horses in my life, other than animals in general. And so I wanted to be able to do something to give back, but I didn't really have anything. I don't have any money. And the only thing I had was a couple of dogs. And so I looked into the therapy program, and once I got my dogs certified, and I started taking them to the hospital and nursing homes, I could see how much it helped and what a difference it made to people. It was unbelievable. So for me, it was a dog ministry that you can help so many people and you can encourage them. And there's so many people that are hopeless. They have nobody that cares about them at all. And it's so funny because the dogs open a door that people can't open because, you know, they don't care. They don't care what you look like. They don't care if nobody loves you. They love you.
Right,
And,
right.
you know, I mean, they're just so awesome because there's no hidden agenda to them. They love everybody and everybody's equal in their eyes. And so people start opening up to you, and then you're able to help them. You're able to show that, yes, we do care. And, you know, then I've been able to find them help or get things that they needed for them so they can realize that there are people out there that care. And the dogs really, really brought that to the fore. They do amazing jobs. That's where I'm going when I get through. So I try to go several times a week, as much as COVID slowed it down, but it's all back to normal. And so they do good work, and I'm going to continue in my dog ministry.
Awesome.
So we'll get you out of here with this. I'm going to make it a two-parter. I actually have several questions, but I'll make it this one two-parter. So tell us about your book, Diane Crump, A Horse Racing Pioneer's Life in the Saddle, and where people can get it. And then also, you've had a career full of injuries. You've been crushed underneath your horse. So what would you say was your worst injury, and has that affected your body today? I mean, we see like football players that have a hard time getting out of bed that are, you know, past their retirement and things like that. Has those injuries affected you physically at all at this point in your life?
Well, they have a couple of the worst things. My knees and my shoulders are completely worn out, but I refuse to let it stop me. So yes, I have had lots of things, but to me, I don't want to have them all replaced. I've had lots of surgeries. I don't want any more. So yes, I get my knees injected on a regular basis, back, shoulders, whatever. But for me, it's you keep moving. I don't allow myself to not go. So I hike, I work every single day. I take my dogs to the hospital. I visit nursing homes. I don't stop. So to me, that's the key. Don't stop. It's mind over matter. Yes, I have lots of aches and pains. I don't care. I'm going to keep going, and I'm not stopping until they put the dirt over me.
And tell us about your book and where people can find that at.
The book is, I believe that I was led by the Lord because I kept getting this feeling that I needed to tell my story. And for me, I was searching for someone to help me write it because I didn't think I was capable. And I asked God that morning, would he please show me what to do? And that night, when I got home from work, I was taking my dog to a training class, and there was a message on my machine, and the message was from Mark Schrager. He said, Diane, I've written a few books on racing, and for some reason, your name just keeps cropping up. And he said, would you be interested? And I called him, and we started working together, and we worked on it for a year. And I just told him I thought that I wanted people to know that God gives us all a gift, and that gift is our dream. And if we follow our dream, then we've lived our purpose for life, and that God will see us through. And so for me, I wanted people to know that we all have a gift, and we're all special. And all we have to do is follow that dream and know that God led us. And so that was the goal. And Mark tried his best to help me with that. And I wanted a broader overview of what was going on in that era. And that's why I needed someone like him was so great with research. And so I think together, I hope that we were able to tell the story the way that I wanted it to be told.
Well said. Well said. Excellent. All right. Well, I want to thank Diane. Thank you so much just for coming on. I mean, as I said earlier, I mean, you're a legend. You're a groundbreaker. I mean, there's not enough kind words we can say about you. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, all I can say is I'm a nothing, came from nowhere, but God led me into a history book. So that's what I can tell everybody. We all have something special. We just have to follow it.
And thank you to Dale Cordova again for coming on. We appreciate you being a panelist tonight.
You're welcome, Mike, and thanks for having me. I thoroughly enjoy doing these. It's a ton of fun.
I want to remind everybody, hit that subscribe and like button on whatever you're listening on. And we'll see everyone next time. Have a great night. Thank you for watching.